Rachel Maddow and her team have crafted an excellent segment that deserves immediate attention. In this quick look at JD Vance, Maddow dives into his life and resume, revealing some intriguing insights. Let's take a look.
JD Vance is not a widely known public figure. He is best known for having written a well-received autobiography, which he started while he was at Yale Law School. Mr. Vance also served for 6 months in Iraq as a public affairs unit officer in the Marine Corps. Served in a public affairs unit in the Marine Corps. Yes, even the Marines do have public relations. They're great at it, in fact. But that is the type of unit, a public affairs unit, that he was in when he was in Iraq. After he did his law degree, again at Yale, he became a protege of a very right-wing billionaire who you might remember from the first Republican National Convention that nominated Donald Trump for president. He had a primetime speaking slot. It was one of the weirder speeches of the 2016 RNC. His name is Peter Thiel. He got J.D. Vance a job at a biotech company in San Francisco after J.D. Vance graduated from law school. Peter Thiel got him that job, literally. The company's CEO says explicitly that J.D. Vance was hired, quote, as a favor to Peter, meaning as a favor to Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel then got J.D. Vance a second job. He directed one of his venture capital companies that they, too, should hire J.D. Vance. See, this is why these guys are so against any kind of affirmative action, because clearly they got where they are in this life out of sheer merit, as represented by having your billionaire friend call people and tell them to hire you, even though they're not sure why they're supposed to be hiring you. After Mr. Vance washed out of the second job that Peter Thiel gave him, Mr. Vance then got another job at a different venture capital firm with another tech billionaire, with Steve Case, who founded AOL. How did that one work out? Mr. Case is on the record saying, quote, he wasn't really working very much. Nevertheless, Mr. Vance then was able to go and start another venture capital firm with, surprise, yet more help from Peter Thiel. Like Mr. Thiel, who has named his companies after things in the Lord of the Rings series of J.R.R. Tolkien books. Lord of the Rings is a sort of favorite cosmos for naming things and cultural references for a lot of far-right and alt-right figures, both in Europe and the United States. Peter Thiel names all these things after Tolkien figures and places, like his company Palantir, for example. Like his mentor, like Peter Thiel, who had given him all his jobs in the world, Mr. Vance also, when he founded his own venture capital firm with help from Peter Thiel, named it after a Lord of the Rings thing. He called it Narya, N-A-R-Y-A, which you can remember because it's Aryan, but you move the end to the front. Apparently that word has something to do with elves and rings from the Lord of the Rings series. I don't know. In his new firm, Mr. Vance made one notable investment in one Kentucky company. That Kentucky company went public and then promptly went bankrupt. So that's the career. Does that sound like the rocket fuel trajectory of a person on a fast track to be nominated as the vice presidential nominee of the Republican Party of the United States before he turns 40? No, it does not. Writing a memoir and otherwise being Peter Thiel's intern is not usually the way you get to be a vice presidential nominee. It's not usually the way you get to be a United States senator either. But it is the way you get to be a U.S. senator if you're J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance's campaign for the U.S. Senate was the first time he ever ran for anything. His campaign was substantially, emphasis on substantially, funded by Peter Thiel, who dumped $15 million into a super PAC that supported J.D. Vance's run for Senate. That super PAC then further effectively took over the operation of the campaign and ran most of it for Mr. Vance. And after Peter Thiel personally took J.D. Vance to meet Donald Trump, literally, Peter Thiel physically walked him into the meeting and presented him to Trump. That is how Vance got the Trump endorsement for that U.S. Senate seat, which is all you need to win a Republican primary for Ohio Senate in 2022. That's how he won the Republican primary. He then vastly underperformed other Ohio Republican candidates on the general election ballot in 2022, but he did win, which is how he got into the United States Senate a grand total of a year and a half ago. And that's how he got to be the vice presidential nominee of the Republican Party right now. as internships go, that's a really good internship. The choice of J.D. Vance to be Donald Trump's running mate is reportedly a decision that was only made at the very last minute, like the day before it was announced. You do not choose a person like Mr. Vance because you think you need help winning the election. When they chose J.D. Vance, they did not think they needed any help winning this next election. If you're trying to make up for some, soft spots, some weaknesses in the Republican Party's electoral prospects, you do not, for example, choose a vice presidential running mate who is on the record, on tape, taking this position.
I certainly would like abortion to be illegal nationally.
I certainly would like abortion to be illegal nationally. 2022 podcast interview first unearthed by CNN Today, in which J.D. Vance says, I certainly would like abortion to be illegal nationally. Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump, whatever you think about his politics and his political instincts, he's been very open about the fact that he sees the Republican Party's strong stance against abortion, particularly a strong stance for a national abortion ban, as an electoral loser. Even though Mr. Trump is the one who orchestrated the overturning of Roe versus Wade and therefore the Republican abortion bans all over the country, Trump has admitted that strongly restrictive stances on abortion, particularly a nationally restrictive stance on abortion, will cost the Republicans elections they could otherwise win. So then why do you pick J.D. Vance to be your running mate? If you are Donald Trump and you pick a running mate and you're looking to pick a running mate to help your electoral prospects because you're worried about your chances of winning the election, you would never pick Mr. I would certainly like abortion to be illegal nationally. You would never pick a national abortion ban guy. Right? You would also not pick a guy who says we're in a, quote, late Republican period in this country. And he doesn't mean capital R Republican. He means small r Republican, meaning we are at the end of being a republic. J.D. Vance quoting there a far-right internet personality and blogger who famously advocates openly for the United States to become a monarchy or an outright dictatorship, who has called for abolishing the U.S. government, the U.S. system of government being abolished so we can instead be ruled by a Caesar figure. That is who J.D. Vance has been citing when he talks about us being in a late Republican period as a country. That's what he thinks about where we are as a country and where we should go as a country. You do not pick a man like that if you are worried about your electoral prospects. I mean, the man who created J.D. Vance as a political figure out of whole cloth and gave him all his jobs and also his seat in the U.S. Senate and also his introduction to Trump, he says he does not believe freedom is compatible with democracy. He wants freedom, so that means he does not want democracy. If you are Donald Trump and the Republican Party and you are worried about your ability to win this election in November, you would not pick J.D. Vance as your vice presidential candidate. You can only pick a candidate as out there as J.D. Vance if you're really thoroughly quite sure that you're going to win no matter what kind of craziness you put on the ticket and what you're going to bring into the White House with you. J.D. Vance is not the guy you pick to win over suburban women or whatever. He's not the persuade the undecideds guy. J.D. Vance is the guy you bring in to change the American system of government into whatever it is you think comes after us being a republic. And you only do that because you already think you have the election in the bag. What is coming together on both sides of the political spectrum right now is that Republicans who are thrilled to have it in the bag, think they have it in the bag. And that's why tonight isn't Nikki Haley giving her acceptance speech. It's not, even Tim Scott or Marco Rubio. It is national abortion ban, end of the republic, J.D. Vance, who is giving the speech tonight. On the Democratic side, this very serious reported turn related to President Biden's prospects of staying at the top of the ticket in this race. These reported visits to the president from the top Democrats in Congress. What is the reporting about this? They're not just going to him and expressing their opinion. They're going to him and they're bringing him the polling. And it is not about the Republicans' hopes and expectations that they have it in the bag. It is about the Democrats' fear that the Republicans might be right, and that therefore a radical change might be necessary to avert what Democrats fear is an otherwise inevitable course. It is J.D. Vance night at the Republican National Convention, and to have that happening at the same time that this reporting is now surfacing about President Biden is as serious as a heart attack.